Hey everybody, welcome to the Gurreck Show. I'm Balin.
I'm Coke Girl.
I'm Anansi.
I'm Jaster Fett.
And this week, before we get too far into anything else, Kevin has a very special message for everyone.
Oh, crap. I really should have printed that up. So, last week, I talked about Northwest Harvest. Oh, yes.
I
There it
got
is.
you, boo.
Northwest Harvest. So, again, amazing charity. They help, they work with pretty much 370 organizations across the state, making sure people do not go hungry. On March 27th, they are working with the Chief Seattle chapter council of the Boy Scouts of America to do a virtual food drive. They're going to be putting door hangers up. They're going to be asking you to contribute the cost of groceries instead of dropping off actual foodstuffs. So if you can, if you do see more, go ahead, donate. That starts on March 27th.
And we'll throw this link up in the comments down below.
Wonderful.
All right, so this week, what do we want to talk about?
Games!
I like games. Games is excellent.
Yes. Board games, card games, sports games, wicked games, all kinds of games. Do you play?
No
them?
head.
What do you like?
No head games though. Nobody likes head games.
Nobody likes mind
Some
games.
people like head games.
And there are, unfortunately, some people like head games. All right, so you bring it up. What's a good game?
What's a good game?
Ooh.
I'm
Tag.
actually
You're
I'm
it.
actually on a dry spell right now. I don't know what game to play.
Oh,
I've been playing Fallout 76, and I've
And you lost me.
I'm a head out.
There's nothing wrong with Fallout 76. It's improved considerably since it started.
That's what I've heard.
At least you're not playing,
it's been really, it's been really fun.
the chores game. Or whatever it is, Animal Crossing, where all you do is chores.
I love Animal Crossing. It got me through a lot of 2020. It did.
No.
It kind of depends on the type of game because there's a lot of games out there. My current favorite is a co-op ghost hunting like puzzle game horror slash, but it forces you to work together with 3 other people to figure out the type of ghost. It's called Phasmophobia.
Oh, I've
I've
seen
been
videos on that.
very,
I
very
heard about
into
that.
it. I love it. Shout out to all my Phasmo friends who are going to tune in. They said they would. We've been supporting each other through Twitch streaming and what have you.
Thank you for
Which is another thing I've also gotten into with gaming is Twitch streaming, and it's helped a lot with like depression and missing friends and missing talking to people. And Phasmophobia I think I like because it forces you to talk to people. It forces you to work together instead of against each other like most games are player versus environment this case, but a lot of games are player versus player. I don't like player versus player games. A lot of people do. I am not one of those people.
I just don't have the time or the patience to invest in get good, so to speak.
I can't do the grind to get good to play something that I just want to play to escape the real world. So
It's like I just want to not be me for a couple hours. Is that too much to ask?
Yeah, exactly. So I will pick one of those games, or I will pick something like Breath of the Wild or Legend of Zelda or role-playing games like RPG style. Those are my favorites.
Love me some Breath of the Wild.
Yeah. So, yeah.
That's pretty much my video game.
I've seen a lot of videos of Phasmophobia. It looks amazing.
I love it. I love it so much.
I just don't want to scream.
Once you get started and into it, I remember being really scared of it, but the more you play it, like the braver you'll get.
My handler first told me about it here about a couple of weeks ago when he was helping me out with some videos for Jaster's jokes and some virtual troops as well.
It's a great game. I love it. And it's continually being worked on. So they're adding updates all the time. New maps, new ghosts, new objectives. Very fun.
Yeah.
I've also gotten into Valheim. I talk about games until I'm blue in the face. So.
Oh, that's what this is about.
Yeah.
Valheim is how do I describe it? It's like a Viking Minecraft
Do they
adventure
have horns
game.
on their helmets? Like
No.
really?
But you do get to fight like Norse gods and stuff, so that's pretty fun. But it's got a survival aspect, it's got a fighting aspect, and it's got a crafting aspect.
Would you say
And-
it's similar to like Ark? Survival. Have you played that one?
I have not played Ark.
Oh man. So yeah, I think Valheim's kind of close to Ark in playstyle, where Ark you like wake up on an island and there's dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, some of the guys on the app team have been talking about it off and
Oh
on.
my god, yeah. And
Okay.
you know, it's got the traditional punch a tree. You know, people have tree punching,
Punch a tree! Like
dinosaur
Minecraft.
Play it
punching.
with my son.
You just punch things until you figure
Can
out
get-
ways not to punch things, and
until
you
you
build
can
an
get
axe, and
materials.
then you go, oh, now I gotta build a house, and then.
But
yeah.
don't forget that in Ark, one of the key factors in Ark is you actually have to physically, in the game controls, whatever, you have to make your character poop, because if you don't, he'll get sick and he'll pass out.
Oh my
You
gosh.
also use your poop as
I don't remember that part of the game.
I
I
have
thought it
played
just happened
I've
automatically.
played another
Sometimes you just
game.
poop
you
your
have to
pants.
set Ark Survival Evolved. You have to make your character poop, and you can fling it at people or use it as building supplies.
I think you're playing a different version.
So one of the most ridiculous games.
Putting me.
I'm not kidding. You have to make it poop.
It's important, guys.
Well,
Trust
pooping is
me,
important.
I'm very aware of the importance of
Everybody poops.
Everybody poops, and everything comes down to poo.
Yeah.
except me.
So it's important. The most ridiculous game I think I've played is called My Summer Car, in which the whole purpose is you're trying to build the summer car so you can go somewhere and do something. But you're drunk, you work for like a sanitation company that
Back to poop.
yeah, back to poop. Exactly. That's what gave me the idea. Like, it's a Swedish game, indie game where you have to balance. You're hungry. You need to pee. You still want to build your car. You need money. So you have to go empty septic tanks and drive your big truck places. It's a crazy game, but it's one of those things that has that. Here's my pee bar and here's my beer bar. And you have to keep one filled and one empty. It's just
Doesn't matter
ridiculous.
which.
I love indie games. It's great.
Yeah, my favoriteest indie game has got to be Stardew Valley. I absolutely adore it. It's such a wholesome. It's not wholesome. It's pretty wholesome, but it's got layers like an onion. But it's fun. You just build a farm, and you take care of it, and you fight monsters, and then you start drama with people in town.
So it's like Animal Crossing,
A little bit, except
but with
you know,
fighting.
a raccoon isn't stealing all your cash, so you don't owe them anything. So
Balin
Yeah.
looks completely lost.
you gotta play Stardew Valley. It's a good single player. Building
Well,
up.
on that front of indie games, the one that I recommend to a lot of people if they really like Destiny, but we're kind of like, is Warframe. Warframe's actually been out for a while now. It's actually been out for 8 years now. My best friend and his wife got me into it, and it's fun. It's a little bit too detailed for me. It's got a lot going on and whatnot as far as how to advance your equipment, how to advance your character and whatnot. And so it's fun in small doses for me, but nonetheless, it's fun and it's a great multiplayer game.
Another one I really like is called The Long Dark. That's another survival game where you're up in Canada. You're dropped off in the middle of absolutely nowhere. You have to figure out why, and then you have to find things to survive and stay warm and eat and not get dysentery.
That sounds a lot like Ark.
It's
minus
a
the
great,
poop.
it's a great
Yeah.
game.
And
Long Dark
it
is crazy.
comes back to poop.
Everything comes down to poo.
I like games like that, but there's got to be. I don't want it to turn into just
Like
real
a walking
life,
simulator?
where you're like, oh, now I'm hungry. Now I got to go find food, and now I'm,
That's called real life. I
Yeah.
play games to get away from
I
real
try to
life.
escape that.
yeah. And you're like, I'm cold. Oh, now I'm too hot. Oh, now I'm wet. Now I gotta go to the bathroom. And it's like, I do that already.
Yeah.
I've got that nailed. I,
You know, if in real
I wanna
life-
do
Really
something
good
that
at it.
I can't do. Like I can't shoot webs, and I can't, shoot a rocket launcher whenever I feel like it. So that's a bit of escapism is a lot of fun.
Now, if in real life, every time I found my wallet, I heard, that would be awesome. But I
I
don't.
hear that very often. It's my husband's ringtone for when he gets a text message.
Oh,
So
that's
all the time. Ba-na-na-na.
But I don't get that when I find my wallet or my keys
Oh,
or my shoes or.
You need a hype man for that.
how perfectly
Someone who just
ordinary.
stand right by you every time you find something of great importance to
Well,
you,
Joey,
and they play that.
You
Are
need
you
You're the
Joey.
volunteering?
hype man I know, so you need to move out here and be my hype man. You can follow me when I'm doing my walks, and you can, just pump me up. Come on.
Now, Balin, you've been doing a lot of walking,
I have been.
right?
Yes, I have to. So I have to. So if we're talking gaming, I got my first.
Hey!
Yay!
I'm doing, for a lot of people, I'm trying to rebuild myself. So I started doing virtual 5Ks. Sad when it takes me 3 days to do 5K, but I did it.
The fact that you
did it.
did it is amazing.
So I'm proud of myself. But it goes with our gaming theme of the evening. And I saw this
I
one.
like it. It's cute.
Many
Takes me
memories
back.
with this controller. And it's like the right size too. And it's heavy.
So that
I
brings
actually
up a
have more
question.
walks
Seeing
coming.
that controller, what's the first game each and every one of you have played?
Oh,
First game. Go all
Very
the
first
way
game?
back.
All the way back. Pong.
What?
Tetris?
Mario Brothers.
Pac-Man?
Pong.
The first game that I played on a console that I actually owned, though, I was a very late bloomer. So that was Super Smash Brothers for the 64. I didn't get a console until way later.
Now my first, when I got, a console that was mine, my NES was Mega Man 2. That was the first game I got for it and fell in love. That's what got me playing video games when I started. Legend of Zelda, which was awesome because for the first time, you could save your game.
It's a big deal. It's a really
Yes,
big deal.
Was
It
awesome.
was huge.
The first time I got a PlayStation, PlayStation 2, I think I got Kingdom Hearts for it, but kind of forgot to get a memory card, so it's just like playing through it as much as I could for the night, and realized I couldn't save.
Interestingly,
So I'm like, well, I just got really good at that part of the game.
How about you, Joey? What's the first game?
First video game I ever played was the Super Mario Brothers for the NES.
Oh man, you children.
Yeah.
How about you? Do you remember?
My first game was on the Atari 2600.
Back in my day!
That's right. That's right.
Oh, you young whippersnapper.
You gonna learn today,
Get off
son.
my lawn!
you're talking Atari. I was saying Pong. Beat that one.
My Atari had wood trim,
Oh,
beautiful
yeah.
wood trim, just like a station wagon.
Okay, I'm gonna guess.
Gorgeous.
You either
Just
playing
bespoke.
Asteroids or Zaxxon.
Combat.
Oh, yeah, I like Zaxxon.
Combat. So if you haven't heard of Combat before, basically in the Atari 2600 it was like all of like 4-bit. So you had different modes. You had tank versus tank, and they kind of just, it was like one of the first like
Square versus
PvP
square.
games. Like, so you had to play with somebody. Your tanks, you move your little tank around, and it's like a rectangle with one little stick going out of it, and shoot. And there's like all kinds of little barriers, and they had different game modes where like sometimes your tank was invisible until you shot, so both of you are invisible moving across. Or they had ping pong shots, so you could ricochet your shots along walls. And then other game modes were biplanes and jets.
And we've come such a long way.
I know it, but there's something just so fun about just sitting there and just sitting in the same room as somebody and just you can actually see their tank moving and like maneuvering and boom, and then tank would spin and then you'd start over and there was a little counter. So that was my first. The first game I bought was Metal Gear for the for the NES. Yeah, got $20. I felt like a god.
Sitting here looking up at pictures of combat on Google, and it's like, holy crap.
That's right. You want to show everybody?
Yeah, I'm trying to find a good one. Oh, this one. This
A good one. Mm.
well, you have
Is that
to,
impossible?
you have to understand what we dealt with back in the day as far as graphics were concerned.
Oh, I know.
They're
dealt
like
with it.
lines.
I just never experienced it.
You had to have a good imagination.
I mean, a game was a game.
I mean, this was going at an angle right there.
Yeah.
Hey, it looks like a tank.
Yeah.
Does it?
Yeah.
Kinda like
Generally.
the Death Watch symbol got rotated,
Tank
Thank
shape.
you.
but it was what we had.
Yep. So much fun. I don't know why it was so much fun, but it was. And we liked it. We loved it.
We loved it.
And it gave us something to do on a rainy day
What?
besides clean our room.
Anything but clean our rooms.
Because that was usually the only other option was clean your room. Can I play my game?
Now, did any of you, maybe not Balin, play GoldenEye for the 64?
Yeah.
Yeah, back in the day, that was like Friday night for us. It's like ordering a
If you
pizza.
If you were Odd Job, you were scum of the earth.
Yeah, those were great. That felt like
yeah.
the beginning of like those combat games.
Oh, definitely. It brought multiplayer shooters basically to the forefront.
Well, at
And
least on the
people
console.
ate it up. Yeah.
So, video games, awesome. But what about other games you're playing? Bless you.
Thank you.
Bless you, my son.
I'm playing Sabak like a nerd.
Ooh, share. Dish.
Well, a friend of ours is a metal worker, Shane, of course, and he makes all of the credits. So we've played the standard, Sabak game that you can get right from Disney that they sell, or you can go back to like Legends and figure out how they played it before the Solo movie came out. And there's two different gameplays. And both are very fun, but I actually find I like the older version better. So the basics of Sabak is you've got minus cards and plus cards, and you're trying to get as close to 0 as you can. And the other version of the game is you're trying to get to 23. So it's kind of the same concept, slightly different cards a little bit. But for a card game, it's really fun. There's a lot of betting. And just the feeling of having all of the credits in front of you that just go clicky clack, and you're like, oh, I'm just going to collect all of these. They're shinies.
It's like, oh,
they're
this
my
is
click
real.
clacks.
This is happening.
Yeah. So that's been really fun also, is learning an actual like game I could play at conventions and teach the club and have like a club size game, because you can play
It's funny because
Sabak
I
with
thought
8
about
players.
that too. I thought about that too because I got the Han Solo card game, which is basically just Sabak.
Yeah, it is.
And I've actually toyed around with the idea of actually having some kind of Sabak table at the 501st or Mando Mercs table.
That's what we want too.
Yeah, I never got around to like putting that idea out there just because
I'm
it just
basically teaching everybody I know how to play it, so eventually I can have that game with 8 people because it's an 8-person game. You can have it from 4 and up.
It's basically like,
But
take all your shinies.
but you have the shinies in front of you, and then
Jaster
you're
is
trading.
definitely interested.
I loved it so much that I have started designing how to carry a Sabak deck with my new kit because I like it so much.
Ear caps, half the deck on each side.
Right, just right here.
Shuffle.
No, I'm just gonna do a pouch. I think that'll be
Well,
easier.
fine if you want to go the easy way.
Boring.
Work smarter, not harder.
There's enough stuff on my helmet already.
That's fair.
That one I'll give you.
Yeah, I do like card games. Card games are really fun when you want a short, quick game. Of
Unless
course
it's
there's-
Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh, then you're gonna be there for a while.
well,
Short games.
Bad
But
example.
something to use with a standard playing card deck.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's like the
Can't go wrong
difference
with
of Go Fish or Crazy Eights, Spoons.
Slapjack. My son doesn't like playing that game.
War. I used to play a lot of War with my
I played
sister.
a lot. I played a lot of War in high school, like a lot.
That was pretty much our Christmases. Was just card
Playing
games.
War.
War.
Yeah,
There's always the old fallback.
yeah, I-
Uno.
No, yeah. Uno.
The classic,
Yes.
the game that tests friendships.
But
Yes.
have you played Uno with the
Reverse.
attack?
No. Is that the
No.
one that spits
Wait.
cards at you?
Yeah.
What?
It's called Uno Attack, and instead of having the deck that you draw from, you have to push the button, and maybe it spits cards at you, maybe it doesn't.
I don't like that.
I like
And
that idea.
That's weird.
it's because you never
Yeah.
know, but you usually can tell about it's getting primed. It's getting primed, and someone's gonna get it all the cards.
Yeah, that's a little too Russian roulette for me.
It has
I
a
mean,
certain
it's-
element of surprise.
do you remember?
Uno plays you.
No, do you remember that game as a kid where it was basically like this alligator mouth and you had to like pull its teeth? Did you ever have that as a kid?
Yes, I remember that one.
And if you pulled one, it would chomp down.
Chomp,
That's like Russian roulette for a kid.
Oh yeah. Oh
That
yeah.
and what was the other one? Perfection,
Yes.
where you're
Oh.
trying to put all the things back and then it all suddenly explodes.
I don't like that.
Oh,
either.
no, what about Operation?
Oh hell yeah! Operation was the bomb.
Right?
I'm good at
Operation
this
made me
game.
feel awesome. Yeah. A kid in a sugar rush.
What do you
Ah!
No.
I've
No.
not-
All right, my kid
I'm
will
in this
never be a
conversation
surgeon.
and I feel so attacked right now.
Yeah. There's no. Yeah. Hide sister's ADD meds and go it. I'm a winner.
Again! I am in this conversation. I feel
That's
attacked.
2 out of
I do not like it. Please take it down. Stop.
But yeah, when I was in high school, I got really heavy into the Yu-Gi-Oh card game, and I came across it just because it was my freshman year. I was making some friends with the upperclassmen. I had way more upperclassmen friends than friends in my own class, even though I got along with my own class very well. And I was just so interested with what they were doing, and they just brought me to the table, helped me build my own deck. I went to my first tournament that summer, never won a single tournament in my hometown, but I did win one official tournament in Spokane the weekend before my 18th birthday, and that was the last tournament I played in my entire Yu-Gi-Oh career before
You're like, I peaked.
You hung
There
up-
isn't
you
any
hung
more.
up
It wasn't just so much that I peaked as much as it was that a lot of the people because like I mentioned before, a lot of my friends were upperclassmen. I was a junior by the time that I quit the game because they were all gone.
There's no one else
And
to
almost
play
nobody,
with.
and almost nobody in my class played it. And very few people, very few kids in the underclass ever really played me. And the tournament scene was starting to slow down because Deer Park Video was the one that hosted the tournaments for a while. Well, they went out of business in 2000. Early 2005, and that's 2004 was when I started. No, it was 2005. Early 2005 was when I stopped playing because that's when the video store was going out of business and all the tournaments were in Spokane. I had no way of getting out there, so I just said, well, you know what? I think I'm just going to call it. I sold all my cards. I think I sold my deck for like $200,
Wow.
and then I sold
Not bad.
my collection for another 50 just because it was mostly just commons and holographics, but. Yeah, it was a fun little run while it lasted. I've got very fond memories involving Yu-Gi-Oh.
I feel
I actually got back into it for like a little tiny bit when I was married, but quickly got out of it just because the ex decided to rage quit because I started winning more. So, but yeah, no, Yeah, I was decent at that game. I was decent.
It
Not
reminds me
too
of what
wrong.
happened with the Pokemon cards, because I used to play a decent amount in high school also, but it was like the same thing. Once
Very
people
many
that played,
collected them. Very few played them.
yeah, I played them. I loved it. I thought it was great. But as like a little noob getting into like the trading card games and how they actually worked, I thought it was a very good introduction. And it's basically just a gateway to Magic the Gathering.
It really
Once
is.
you
It's
get
a
there.
gateway card right there. It's gonna get you into that.
Well,
Like
Pokemon's a
pooping.
gateway drug.
Like pooping.
Yeah, like pooping.
And all card games go back to Magic the Gathering.
It's true. I mean, Magic's the OG.
It really is.
The original game.
I tried getting into it, but I just I had very little interest. And not to mention, I was putting a lot of time and resources
It
into
was
Yu-Gi-Oh!
very
At the time.
basic. Yu-Gi-Oh was a little more. It was like the next step up from the
It was very-
Pokemon.
It was the thing I liked about Yu-Gi-Oh! Was that it was very fast paced. Magic is very methodical.
Yes.
I mean,
yes, very much.
easily a match of Magic. I mean,
It can take a while.
it can take at least an hour.
calculated. Yeah.
like an average match can be anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour.
Ooh.
Yeah. And that was half of what kind of turned me off to it, because it's like, I don't know if I can sit that long.
They're long.
Heck, I think the longest Yu-Gi-Oh match I was ever in was an hour, because typically they're only like 15, 20 minutes. They're that fast.
See, my ADD is way too strong. I can't spend that long.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't do it.
Exactly.
I never got into the competitive. I tried, but it was with Marvel Overpower. I don't know if anybody remembers.
I've never
that.
heard of that one.
Never heard of that
Same.
one.
Yeah, it didn't
Big
last very long.
memories.
It was obviously more for the artwork on the cards than it was for anything else.
I also had a brief stint, like a couple months at most, doing Hero Clicks. Hero Clicks was a lot of fun too.
That's the little miniatures.
Yeah, and it's kind of like it's like it's a strategy game. It's a collector strategy game, and it was a lot of fun. I did a lot in. I did the Star Trek version, which was what got me interested, and then I started getting into the DC universe portion of that. And like I said, I only played for like a few months, and it was a lot of fun. I just got out of it just because I was getting. I kind of caught myself early. Kind of overspending on that as far as my play money was concerned. It's like, maybe I need to back off a little bit. And I just,
yeah. On some games.
yeah, because I can,
money
well,
sink.
because I'm a very competitive person. I come from a family of athletes and sports nuts, having played sports myself. That's just a part of me that once I want to try and get better, I get what Jen lovingly calls hyperfixation. It's very much an ADD thing.
Yeah.
And and so and if you don't catch yourself early, then you're not going to catch yourself at all unless somebody else tries it. And then when they do, it's like, you know.
How does
So
that
and
go again?
No, I just get I
Gonna
get
have to
mean,
record
and then
that.
I
Let's
get
save
like,
that
why are you
clip.
bothering me?
Yep.
Yeah, I get a little nippy.
Gonna replace the Gurreck roar with just that little.
This is Jaster, our attack chihuahua.
He's hungry.
I'm hungry.
Got Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
Let's poke him with a stick.
Come on, do stuff.
Be funny.
Yeah.
I am funny. Hilarious.
Yeah. With gaming, there's a bit of a collector's aspect to it that kind of goes ignored sometimes. I mean,
If we're gonna
and there's a
talk-
lot of games that have a collecting aspect to them, like Cards Against Humanity. They come out with like little booster.
Oh
packs
gosh.
of more raunchy stuff.
Yeah.
All
And
the
then
time.
even with video games, they started doing it with like amiibos
Now, a great
and
alternative.
all that.
Amiibos,
to Cards Against Humanity is Apples to Apples.
Yeah, that's the kid-friendly one.
The
That's a
Original.
great. Yeah, the OG. That's a great alternative. In fact, I have had as much fun playing Apples to Apples as I have Cards Against Humanity, and in fact, I will actually probably sooner play Apples to Apples just because my raunchier humor on an average day tends to be more tame anyway. And so Apples to Apples is more right up my alley as far as humor's concerned.
You're too
And it
wholesome
never
for,
loses its,
for Cards
I don't know
Against
what it is.
Humanity.
It just
But-
never loses its novelty.
But how do you feel about Apples to Apples Junior?
There's a junior version?
Oh yes,
Wait, as in
green.
As in they take the kid-friendly version of that game and
make it more kid friendly, and it's almost
challenge
worse.
accepted.
It's called Apples to Apples Junior. I think the box is green.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, it's like a green
Cards
apple.
Against Humanity is coming out with a family version.
I heard about that.
Oh.
Cards Against Humanity.
Okay.
Cards Against the Family.
So maybe they
Cards Against the Family.
few of the raunchier things, and we've
That is going to be the subject of a lot of
I
special
haven't- I-
conversations.
Oh, but raunchier. Yeah, I mean, you want raunchier because it's like Cards Against Humanity can get raunchier. It's like, yeah, it's another. It's like a spin-off game called Crabs Against Humidity.
Crabs
And if
and
you've read
just
the-
humidity.
Oh God.
That's
Those
what it's called.
cards.
It's called
Oh, the
Crabs
stuff of
and just
nightmares.
humidity.
They can make a truck driver blush.
Yeah, no thanks. I do have the Cards Against Star Wars. It's not. I don't think it was edited. Like there's a lot of typos
that was
in
the
it.
one that came. That was the one that came out of the UK. I
Or
think.
something, but there's
And
so many
and
typos
there was a
in
lot
it.
of British references in there too that I didn't pick up, but one of my friends that was actually playing with us was like, "Isn't that like a British reference?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah,
Oh,
because the
yeah.
cards were made in the UK. Go figure." So yeah, it was never. It was a grammatic mess. And
It
then,
was.
not to mention, there were a few cards where it was the fill in the blank cards, and it was discombobulated.
They
from,
don't
like,
all
the
match up
get-go.
as nicely. Yeah, I don't think it was
No.
edited at all.
No, or play
Always
tested.
Trying to capture lightning in a bottle. And
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Doesn't work at all.
Were you going to say something, Balin, back at Apples to Apples?
Oh, when he was talking about collections, I was like, if we'd be remiss if we're going to talk about collections. I thought he was going collecting.
Collecting.
Well,
Oh, just like collecting in general?
well, the games. And I said we would be remiss not to talk about a certain person we all know who collects every video game ever made. Cruiser.
Oh, yeah.
Cruiser.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Cruiser's got a kick
Dat shelf, though.
Dat
Dat
shelf.
Redid his living room around
It's beautiful.
video games.
Around his game collection.
That's like
That's
adult
ballsy.
goals. Like
That's
what
ballsy.
you want.
Yeah, when you love something, you gotta show the world that.
Oh, absolutely. I am here for this. But it's just one of those things where it's like, you know what? Looking at this, I want to grow up to be this man. But the problem is, I'm already too far along with my life.
It's
it's
never
probably
too
not
late,
gonna
Jaster,
happen.
to follow your dreams.
Here's what you do: you get him to update his will to leave everything to you, and then things.
You're
happen.
gonna have to fight a couple people.
That's gonna take a lot. That's gonna take a lot of alcohol and wiggle room for me to pull that off.
I believe in you.
I have faith.
That makes two of us. Do we get a third?
No.
Okay. So we're deadlocked.
Deadlock.
But anywho, so here's one that I'd like to present to everybody here because we all have that. I think it stands to reason that we all have that one game that we really, really liked. Be it board, and it can
Board
encompass
games?
everything.
Okay.
Board game, video games. We all have that one game that we've really liked, but everybody else is just kind of like meh at best, or it's like not good. We all have one.
I'm
So
sure
I
we
had
do.
one of my favorite games like that was I had the Sega Genesis, and I had the Superman game for it, which I enjoyed because those that know me, I'm a Superman nut, especially at that time frame. Nobody else I know liked that game. They're like, "It sucks! How dare you! It's Superman! Shut up!" So that one.
Like mine was, oh, and I have to, because I never really, admittedly, I did really like Mass Effect Andromeda when it came out, even though the story was absolutely horrendous. I probably defend it more than I should, realistically. But I would have to say a game that I really liked, that I defended personally, that I really enjoyed, even though I know it got a lot of hate for it, and I got a lot of hate for liking it, was Dragon Age 2. I really liked that game.
Really?
I did. I really liked that game.
I get that, but
It's gotten
people
a resurgence.
gave you trouble over that?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Like not real trouble, but I
Like
mean
anger?
like it would
Did you get in a fight?
spark discussion and debate that I was not expecting, because I had no idea
Interesting.
that the game was so reviled the way it was.
Ain't no hate.
And then, but actually, after talking to this person, and it was, God, I'm trying to remember who it was I talked to about this. But anywho, that they said that I think it was at a convention. That's probably why I'm having a hard time remembering who it was. But they mentioned that from a PC player standpoint, it was a serious downgrade from the first game, because they definitely made it more for a console. And I like my only rebuttal was, well, I played it on console. I am a console guy. I am not much of a computer gamer, so I happened to enjoy it probably a little bit more than most. It wasn't a perfect game by any stretch. I did feel like that the world that they really shrank the world a lot in the second game, but when they did it, it was more to my benefit. Because as much as I really like open world RPGs, the world can sometimes get a little bit too big. And by the time I was playing that, I was already playing games like Skyrim, basically any Elder Scrolls that you can think of. I played the Fallout games, and sometimes those worlds, but the thing about those worlds is they're just so open, you don't feel constrained in any way, shape, or form. Where some open world games, especially in the later years, they kind of, you're either dealing with a lot of like empty environments, or worlds that just seem kind of
Too
like,
linear?
yeah, and it was just, and I don't know. I like Dragon Age 2. Like I said, probably more so than most. But it was perfect for ADD Joey. Let's just put it that way. It was perfect for ADD Joey.
I have a potential 2. I get a lot of flack for liking Kingdom Hearts because it's like, oh, it's Final Fantasy and Disney. Why did they do that? They're just like, but I love it. I love the story.
I
As
love
convoluted
Kingdom
as
Hearts.
it gets. I love it. It's shiny. It's
adorable.
pretty.
I think I was around the right people, though, involving Kingdom Hearts, because it was my best friend Travis that actually got me into Kingdom Hearts. Actually, it was my best friend Travis's brother Chet that got me into Kingdom Hearts. And I don't know. Everywhere, I mean, throughout my high school, when we talked Kingdom Hearts, it was always a great conversation. It was a lot of fun.
And back in the day when there was only one, like Kingdom Hearts 1, it was like, oh, what's gonna happen next? What do you think's gonna happen? And then it I think almost having too many games was a detriment to it.
Yes.
And that makes me
Gotta
really
make that
sad. No,
That's
it's like now it doesn't make
that's
sense.
that cash cow that you gotta milk until
Keep
you
milking.
milk it dry. But I've got a great memories involving Kingdom Hearts 2. I liked the game a lot. I didn't like it as much as the first one because I really felt that they really railroaded the way that the story, or not the story, the way the game mechanics went.
Yeah.
And they definitely took that too far in the third game. The third game
There was
is
so much
literally
happening
too
in
big.
3.
The third game is literally the only game, is like only one of 3 games to date that I've only put 1 hour in, dropped the computer, and took the game back the next day. I was that disappointed in it.
I've only done that with one game.
But
Ooh.
the other one was the latest Star Ocean game, because I've been a huge Star Ocean game. I've been a huge Star Ocean fan for a long time. 3 is probably my favorite, and 2 is a very close second. 4 was okay. Especially since they set 4 up as kind of a prequel. The 5th one came out a couple years ago, and my buddy Kevin at work let me borrow it. I played it for like 30 minutes, and I gave it back to him the next day. I was like, why would you do this to me?
Crap.
Why would you do this to me? I trusted you. But no, with Kingdom Hearts 2, because what I did was I worked every summer for my dad. And generally speaking, a lot of my money went into back to school stuff. So like I bought ever since freshman year, I bought my own clothes, I bought my own supplies, and I always had money left over. So I always bought at least 1 or 2 video games. before the start of the school year. And I believe my senior year, I bought Champions Return to Arms for the PS2. And had I been smarter, I probably would have actually gotten Kingdom Hearts 2 the day it came out. But here's the caveat. I worked for my dad every summer. So when Kingdom Hearts 2 came out and I was penniless, I begged and pleaded him to get the game for me, and then with the promise that I would pay him back. And long story short, I did. He bought the game for me anyway, and that was during my spring break for my senior year. And so, yeah, I did nothing but play that game for like a week. It was good. Good times.
So Kokra, you want to go back to what was your second game?
The second game was The Force Unleashed.
Oh, what? Neither of those games get a lot of flack. Those are beloved
Really,
games.
I feel like I've gotten flack from a lot of my gamer friends.
Maybe for the second one.
Because it is, that's the one I took back.
The first Force, my only problem with the first Force Unleashed game was it was short.
It was short and it was a little linear. Like, here's the path you take, here's what you do. But I played it on the Wii. I think it was like one of my first Wii games, and I loved the concept of, using the Wii mode as the lightsaber, and you got to force push things, and it was just the coolest concept.
That game.
I used the Force. I did it.
That
Did
game
you see
took.
that?
That game took what the dark.
It just fell down.
That game took what the Dark Forces and Jedi Knight games did, and put it on speed. And it was beautiful. Yeah. That being said, I do personally, I think the best of the Dark Forces Jedi Knight games, which people will argue is either going to be Jedi Outcast or Jedi Academy. I prefer Jedi Academy myself, just because you get to play as your own Jedi. And Kyle Katarn, I know, becomes more of a support character, but whatever. But I mean, you get to have your own lightsaber color. You get to create your own Padawan, which is something they hadn't done at that time. That was a great deviation from where Dark Forces started. And in my opinion, I mean that game, for what we got, that was the perfect platform-esque action adventure Star Wars game I could ask for. And so naturally, I compared The Force Unleashed to that. Couldn't help it, because it was meant to be a spiritual successor to that series. And from a next-gen console standpoint, from playing it at the time, it worked. But I still preferred the previous-gen games, just because I felt the difficulty curve was definitely different. They were harder games, but they weren't Dark Souls hard. They were.
Few things are Dark Souls hard.
No,
things are Dark Souls hard, but it was the difficulty curve was nice. The stories were really good. Your equipment layout, as far as what you had available, was very nice. And of course, you didn't have that in the Force Unleashed. You had Force powers, which was the awesome thing it had going for it. And that's probably by far the best epilogue of any, or the best prologue of any game, was when you start off as Darth Vader and
great.
Get a preview of just how powerful you get to be in that game.
He was so slow though. So slow.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be fast.
Doesn't have to be. He just got the
He's a Force.
It's
got
Vader.
the job done.
Balin?
What?
Your turn.
What?
I thought it was your turn.
It's my turn?
Yeah, I already went.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh.
No, you didn't.
He's lying. Look at his
I know he
face.
is.
I did.
That's the face of a
I like
liar.
the Superman game on Sega Genesis.
Oh.
Oh, that's
That's
right.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he did.
that's
Yeah, he
right.
did. Yeah, he
Yeah.
did.
It was
And now
so
we
bad
just
we
look
forgot.
stupid.
Cheer up, Anansi.
Okay, so going all the way back, it's Fallout 76. I enjoy it.
Going all the way back.
I've enjoyed
Back to the beginning of the conversation.
Yeah, pretty much. I go all So I've enjoyed every single Fallout game I've played. I've played through 1, 2. I was super psyched for 3. Loved 4, and then 76 came out, and you know,
That's a lot of
it's
games. If you went from
been
4 to
much maligned.
New Vegas is the best one, and you can be wrong about your pick. I'm okay with it.
I do love New
Don't.
Vegas like a
No.
lot.
Look, New Vegas is a wonderful game. Don't get me wrong. It's
Don't
an
give me a
excellent
butt.
story.
You're gonna give me a butt.
But if you're gonna complain about,
Language.
yeah, I know. I stopped myself. I saved myself. I'm good. If you're
It's been rough.
I know. Yeah. If you're gonna complain about bugs in the other Fallout games like Fallout 76,
It's Bethesda.
yeah,
Come on.
yeah, New Vegas is Bethesda as well. Even though
It's
Obsidian,
a feature.
I was gonna say it was published. It was published by
know.
Bethesda, but developed by Obsidian, which I don't
Yeah,
care what
but
anybody
they're-
says. Obsidian gets way too much hate. I love Obsidian.
no, they're wonderful, but they
Yes.
try too hard and break stuff
That's
way
true.
too easy. And we gave them a pass on Knights of the Old Republic 2, which same problems. They rushed
Maybe
through
you
it.
did. I love that game.
I love the game too, but
I
it's
would've loved it
buggy
more
as
if it left stuff
crud.
in.
And
I
so
looked
is New
past.
Vegas.
I looked past all the. I see where you're
Yeah,
going. I
see?
see what you're doing.
If you're gonna, you look past all the bugs, and the same thing with 76. It was buggy when it started. They've worked those out. They've been working on the balance. They still have that amazing brand of environmental storytelling as you're walking across West Virginia. You find basically little vignettes, and you basically have to suss out what happened yourself. The gameplay is solid. The shooting is probably the best it's been. And some of the melee combat is actually
What's your favorite Fallout game?
decent. My favorite. Oh geez, man, I played Fallout 2 so much. I mean,
Fallout 2 is a classic.
Fallout 2 is super duper fun, but as far as games that people hate, it's 76 by far. Because
That's fair.
I mean, you almost left the talk because I said it. So I mean, yeah, and if you can look past the bugs of New Vegas and see it for what's underneath, you can do the same with 76, and you can do the same with
People
Coder
enjoy
too. Bugs. I'm looking, I mean,
It's a feature.
yeah, especially with Bethesda games. And I still love the heck out of them because I can just sync time. That's where my hyperfixation comes in. I just sit there and I'll just wander. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make 20 daggers today. That's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna go mining, and then I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna kill some bandits who, for some reason, think they can start some mess, and they can't.
And then of course the beautiful thing about Skyrim, so when you were talking about building daggers, is have you ever just focused on your blacksmithing skills on doing nothing but smithing iron daggers?
And then suddenly your enemies are like a higher level than you, and you've got an elder dragon on your hands, and you're like, all I've been doing is making iron daggers.
But the thing about it though is when you're okay, to be fair, smithing iron daggers like nonstop is just another level of grinding within grinding. I mean, we're talking exhibit yo dog level grinding.
Yeah.
Because the whole premise behind it is when you blacksmith, you gain character levels as you do because it's a skill. And iron daggers, and somebody showed me that, and I don't even remember who it was that showed me that, but it is the easiest item to make because all you need are leather strips and iron ingots. Two of some of the easiest things to find in that game. And so you can literally make iron daggers out the wazoo so long as you have the items that you need to make it. And you can literally max out on smithing in a few hours.
Well, it's youngin.
Why you gotta be like that?
You're
Yeah,
showing
I
your
gotta be like
youth,
that. Why you gotta be
Jaster.
In Morrowind.
Much the
Have you
same.
played Morrowind?
Again,
Of course I played
Bethesda.
Morrowind.
I don't know.
There's
I
a
know
lot of
you got-
Bethesda
talking
games
about,
being
the
tossed
first
about
game
here.
I played was on my Nintendo, so I don't know.
Back in my day.
My goodness, we haven't had a video game in these parts in 35 years.
Well, Morrowind,
I'm
the
gonna flip
athletic
the script.
skill.
So you talk about
All
games.
you had to do is run and jump everywhere. You're just jumping. Jumping
Now
across the
Travis
countryside.
told me about that one.
Yeah.
I remember that because I came over to his house one day. I was in 8th grade and he was playing Morrowind, and he's just running around and jumping like an idiot in game. And I'm like, what the heck are you doing? Because I'm leveling up.
I'm upping my athleticism.
Like, how? It's like, well, when you run and jump, you gain levels in athleticism. I'm like,
It's like sneaking around Skyrim and casting Muffle. Does the same thing. As you're walking around, just cast Muffle.
Bethesda with the Elder Scrolls took grinding to like a completely different level, like in its own like little way of doing things. Got some technical issues on Anansi's end.
He's a little blurry.
A little blurry. Yeah.
Put your hand up and bring it back slow. We can edit this out.
No, we can't.
Yeah, we can.
Well,
Use the Force, Anansi.
a little better.
You're still a
Yeah.
little blurry.
Well,
Just a little better.
maybe
You're fuzzy.
maybe it's because I'm vibrating so fast. I have coffee or something.
It may be the chemo. I don't know.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I'm not.
Oh well.
Well, wait, no, that would
I haven't had that much alcohol. That was yesterday.
I haven't had any. It's a work night.
So, gonna flip it a little bit.
Okay.
Okay.
A game you hated that everybody else loved.
Ooh.
And I'll start it off. I'm gonna throw myself under the bus.
I can do that. I can do that
Skyrim.
real hard. Okay.
Which one?
Skyrim, he said.
Oh man.
Why am I friends with you?
Somebody actually bought the game for me, and I played it for a day, and it's like, yeah, I spent money on this. Wow.
Wow. I can't.
I can understand. I mean, it's a specific type of game. It's an open world. There's not a ton of direction, and you're an old school player. You're like, I want like set things to do, and this one's like choose your own adventure. Talk to this random person, and he'll send you on like 5 different mini missions this way, and then all of a sudden you're
Which is what
you're
I
the
love
leader of the assassins.
What
All
I
of a
love
sudden,
about Breath of the Wild is, yeah, there's a certain endpoint, but you can do it in whatever order you want. And because Breath of the Wild is currently my favorite game,
love Breath of the Wild.
cannot wait for 2.
Super great.
But
There's also a Hyrule Warriors Calamity Ganon out now. That's basically like a fighting game, but with all the characters from Breath of the Wild.
I've seen it. I just can't convince myself to spend that kind of money on it.
Understandable.
That's me, because I may have ADD, but I'm cheap.
Game that I hated that everyone else loved. Closest I can come to is Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag.
Really?
I've
Because
got 2
everybody-
versions and I haven't completed it.
Everybody
So,
I
okay.
talked to loved that game, and they could not understand why I didn't. And it boiled down to the fact that it put a real big heavy emphasis on sail ship combat, which I was not a fan of in number 3. I just was not. It didn't jive with me, and
very
because
different from your standard Assassin's Creed game. I will
Which I
give it
didn't
that. But
the difference being that it was, and then on top of that, it didn't have the story both
In and out.
both in and out of the Animus to really kind of
they
keep me
changed
engaged.
that.
A lot of people, I don't know what it was. A lot of people just really liked that game, and I loved the Assassin's Creed games.
I'll tell you why I
early
liked
on.
it. Coming from my end, when I'm introduced to a series of games, especially like Assassin's Creed, it's like I'm gonna have to play it from the first game to figure out what's going on, because it's gotta have a story that continues. And I've watched my husband play, so I had that going for me. But I like pirates, so I've always been fascinated by like the history and everything, and seeing that in real time. But
That was a
also,
big reason why I bought it.
yeah, but Black Flag for me is a standalone game. You can play it without knowing what happened inside or outside the Animus, and just know the Animus is happening, but this is all its own game. You can play it on your own without having to play any of the other ones, but you still get like that rich history. I've cried at the end of Assassin's Creed Black Flag all 4 times Spencer has played it.
Wow.
Like I have an emotional attachment to like just the characters in that game.
Yeah, I could not
But
get
I
into
can
that game to save my
I
life.
agree with the boat mechanic. I don't like the boat mechanic. I understand that in
A
Pirates,
lot of people
boat
did,
boat
and I just
fighting was
I
a
did not
lot.
understand the allure behind it. And they go, well, and a lot of it actually, that's not true.
I
A
didn't
lot
want
of
to
people-
fight
a
the
lot of
ships.
people
I
I
just
talked
wanted to collect all the shanties. I just wanted to sing.
Yeah, and a lot of
That's what I
those were cool. Those were cool.
You gotta unlock them.
But
For
that wasn't the
$20.
problem.
20 bucks. No,
Oh,
yeah.
see, that was the problem. Microtransactions. But no, it just like I said, it just it put way too much emphasis on ship combat, and I did not like it in number 3. But they used it sparingly in they used it appropriately and sparingly enough in number 3 to where it didn't take away my overall experience of the game.
My game that everybody loved that I just couldn't get into was Grand Theft Auto 3. So, everybody loved it. It's amazing. It's a technical masterpiece. And I'm the type of player who plays a game and I'm like, I'm going to be the bad guy. And then, first dialogue choice I get, I can't do it. I got to be nice.
That was my problem in Skyrim. It's like, what do you mean I have to steal this? I don't want to steal this. That's bad.
Yeah.
I got over that quickly.
I
But
couldn't do it.
What? To regain health points? No.
Although, to be honest, I did like Saints Row the Third, but I just couldn't get into Grand Theft Auto 3. And I don't know what it is. I see the games, I see the Grand Theft Auto series, and it looks amazing, and it just doesn't do it for me. I just can't.
I can
do it.
appreciate that.
I've never bothered getting any of them for that same reason, because everybody, and I think it just has a lot to do with the fact the hype I felt was bigger than the game, because from what I saw in a lot of when Grand Theft Auto 3 first came out, and it was heralded as this technical masterpiece, as something to be lauded, and it's like, I'm sure it is, but I can name at least one other game that does something very similar that's not getting a whole lot of love at time and present, and that was, say whatever you want, Morrowind did not get that much love out of the gate, especially in comparison to when Grand Theft Auto 3 came out, and they were both open world adventure games.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and that's how I looked at it, was that it was a product, and I don't mean to sound like this, but it was a product of mass marketing, to where if you throw it out there and herald it as such, as long as it's a good game, when people get it and play it, they will see it as a great game. Because you can't do that with every game. You can't call a bologna sandwich a gourmet grilled cheese and get away with it. I mean, you have to have.
You could if you grill it.
If you
Yeah,
did, but it's. I mean, you're not going to convince me otherwise. But the way that Grand Theft Auto did it, and kudos on Rockstar for the way they marketed it, because they marketed it. They marketed the game, and they hyped up the essentials of what made that game great, and people bought it. And when they bought it, they loved it. So that's more of a kudos on Rockstar's part, which is they're a fantastic developer. I've played. In fact, I have the Red Dead Redemption 2. I haven't played it in several months just because club stuff, other video games, and other things have just taken my interest. Life. But from what I've played, I've liked it. I very much enjoyed it. So, but yeah, Grand Theft Auto 3 to me is not that I did. It's not that I didn't buy the game because I felt it was disliked, but because I'm very wary of hype machines. I always have been, always will be.
I think my games, it's not because the games are bad, because they're not. And I know a lot of people like them. For me, it's gameplay. It's the gameplay that will turn me off to a game. I don't like Halo. I've never played the first person, the storyline of Halo. And I've heard that's great, but
It is.
every time we went to a party, it was, we're going to play Halo, guys.
I was a late bloomer to Halo, and I enjoyed Halo. I enjoyed them. I enjoyed them.
The only experience I've had with Halo is the player versus player. You're on a map.
Oh, yeah.
Go shoot each other. That's the only. I've heard that the story is great, but I can't bring myself to play it because I've had a bad experience.
That was my introduction to Halo, but I had the fortune of actually playing with friends who were very understanding that I don't play these kind of games, and so
I played with friends who that was their game, and so I would spawn a place and then just get killed.
And so it just got to the point. It got to the point where I played so much of it that I figured I might as well try its campaign/story mode. And so I played number 1. I played number 2. Those are the only 2 I've played in the Halo series thus far, and I enjoyed them. I wouldn't say that they're now. Grant, because I was a late bloomer into those games, I probably didn't enjoy them as much as everybody else did, which is fair. But I enjoyed them. I liked them, but but shooters aren't exactly my cup of tea though either.
And I can
unless you're Battlefront, then you're unless you're the original Battlefront, then you're like one of the greatest games ever made. But
I bought my Xbox when I had it just for Halo because I enjoyed the campaign story.
Like I said, I've heard really great things about the campaign,
but
I just can't do it. I'm not a first-person shooter. I don't like
not
those.
either.
I also don't like games that kind of start back from square one. Like each time you play, like League of Legends. League of Legends was very big in college when I went to college, and I tried playing it, and I just didn't like it.
I don't know what game was big when I was in college.
It's a game that it's like what's a tower defense game where you start with the map, you're at a basic level, and the more you do in the game that moment, the more you can buy to like give yourself, I don't know, abilities or what have you. But every game you start at like I'm at the 0 point. There's
Gauntlet's the same way, and
it's basically just grinding.
Yeah, Gauntlet was the same way when I was playing.
Born from the RTS genre, because I think League of Legends or one of them or Dota started from Warcraft 3, so they're kind of built off of that same engine, and every scenario starts off and you've got to build up and try to build faster than the other guy, so that you can Zerg rush them or whatever.
Yes, very much.
So now let's go into the obvious question that we've been ignoring all night. I know Balin had actually already addressed this earlier, but just so that way, for the sake of brevity, favorite video game of all time?
Currently, Breath of the Wild.
I'm going to go with Zelda Twilight Princess.
Oh, good game. Very good.
I really love that one.
Zelda is my
Zelda's my go-to for everything.
Favorite. I've missed a few installments during certain periods of my life where I couldn't afford video games. And then by the time I could, I just couldn't get to that point. But, I love Twilight Princess. I love Breath of the Wild.
Have you played Wind Waker?
I have not played Wind Waker.
Wind Waker makes me so happy.
They released that on the Switch, so I actually bought that.
It's great. I love that one too. The music's great.
I think it's Wind Waker. My brain, again, chemo brain. Is that the one they just released on Switch last year? You go to the island. Brain. Which one is Wind Waker?
Wind Waker, you start on an island, and there's a lot of sailing from island to island, and it's cel-shaded.
Because that one came out on GameCube and was was re-released.
Yes, in like an HD.
Yeah.
That one got a lot of hate when it first came out too.
Yeah, unnecessary hate.
Way unnecessary. I thought it was like a fun, feel good. Like the old games like terrified me in places. I hate Redeads and Gibdos. I hated those. But I don't know, Wind Waker was a little cuter. The music was so catchy, and I love that thing. There was a little bit of humor in it that I really enjoyed. So Wind Waker was
almost like if Zelda in 2002, if The Legend of Zelda had come out in 2002, That's what it would have been. That's the feeling that I got when I played the game, was that this is, and nothing against Ocarina, nothing against Majora's Mask, but playing that game, even aesthetically, and my best friend tried, because he's a diehard Legend of Zelda fan. He thinks I'm crazy every time I say this, but I said, to me, Wind Waker is the most Legend of Zelda appropriate game I have played in the entire franchise. It is so appropriate for the franchise that I just, to me. So, because I don't know, just really, it felt more like Legend of Zelda to me than even Ocarina or Majora's Mask. But, and again, no disrespect to any of those games at all, because they're phenomenal games. But
They're all great games.
And one of the things
they're all great games.
They are.
I don't think now you kind of have to throw out the Philips, CD games that
We don't
came
talk about
out.
those.
We don't talk about those. Yeah, yep. My best friend says that same thing too. What? What games? I have
don't
no
have
idea
to
what you're
mention
talking
them.
about. They have yet to release like a
He's
bad
like,
Legend of Zelda.
No. Let's pretend they don't exist.
that's one of the things. That
Pretend what exists.
even though it's
Exactly.
Very good.
they're each
Yeah. So, yeah. Sorry, I keep what they call at work big dogging people's conversations. I take over conversations, and I'm so sorry.
Oh, not Joey.
Not Joey.
Never. What
Oh.
about you, Anansi?
Oh.
Favorite game ever?
My favorite game ever is a little game called River City Ransom.
I have not heard of that
Have
one.
you,
I've
have you
never
heard of
heard of
River
that.
City Ransom?
Please enlighten
So
us.
imagine Double Dragon as an adventure game. So it was on the NES. So you're two brothers or two besties in a town, and a gang steals your girlfriend, and you have to travel across town to go get her back. But you can power up, so you can get better equipment. You can get food for energy and stuff, and you fight multiple different little gangs. Like I think the first gang is called the Frat Boys, and all of them wear pink shirts, and you're these cute little Domokun looking little guys, and you're just beating the crap out of each other, grabbing garbage cans, chains, bats, baseball, other people just launching people at others. It's so much fun to just get lost in that and just beat the crap out of the cowboy, beating all these different teams like the Cowboys.
See, I remember it.
I like this.
I had to go. I just went and looked at it and said, I remember it because a lot of NES games, the original NES games, were actually arcade games that they brought.
That they
home.
ported.
And so I remember playing that at Castle Amusement Park when I was a
River
kid.
City Ransom?
River City Ransom. I had to go look at it. It's like remembered picking up the 2x4.
Yeah. And just wailing on somebody. And then
Yeah.
when they die, they'll like yell out something like they'd yell out like barf. Like
It was fun.
or mommy. It was It so much fun because it just the added layer of being able to upgrade versus like Double Dragon where it's like you just beat the crap out of people and then you're done. The adventure aspect into leveling up, and you had passwords, but it was old school passwords where you had to get like a piece of paper and write down letter for letter, like, and sometimes there were capital letters. Sometimes it was like remembering a password, and you had to write down this entire huge like multi-line password to get back to where you were. And God help you if you got the wrong letter or you couldn't recognize your handwriting anymore because you were screwed and you had to start all the way over.
Is that
Yeah,
a
well,
or a G?
Super Star Wars, the Super Star Wars games did something like that, albeit not to that extent.
Mm-hmm.
But same concept. If you could not read your own handwriting from like a year before on that save password, you were up the creek without a paddle.
See? Yeah, video games encourage good penmanship. See?
Yes.
They are good for something.
They did back in the day. By cracky.
So where are we now? We've gone.
I
over
think
video
we are
games.
on-
We've gone over card games and stuff like that. There's
Hey!
one game we've kind of avoided.
I was gonna say, weren't there still some?
Word
Wait
games?
a second.
word games.
Oh yeah,
They're
that's true.
games that involve dice and collectible stuff and a buttload of books.
D&D.
D&D.
Ah, that's
D&D.
been our show.
Tabletop. Palin's like, and I'm out.
Don't pretend you haven't started, Kevin.
Playing
Welcome to the jungle.
Don't
I started playing, Kevin.
So,
I tried, but again, we have to. The last time, and technically the first time I really tried getting into D&D, the next morning I woke up and was not in a good way.
Was there too much tasty
that-
adult beverages involved?
no. Shockingly, that's actually when my cancer flared up. That to be recognizable.
Oh.
I woke up feeling like I'd been stabbed in the stomach, and you have diverticulitis. No, I don't.
No, it's worse.
It's much
Yeah.
worse.
That'll take the wind out of the sails
It will.
real fast. Yeah, so
I
that
have not
campaign is
played a
waiting.
lot. I have not played a lot of D&D. I enjoy it when I play. I feel like there's way too much math involved.
Magic math rocks.
But I grew up with text-based role play. I did a lot of it, but it was writing stories with friends. That's how I took it. I started on Neopets of all things. But for me, it was a great outlet to be creative, to come up with stories, to be imaginative, and it really helped my spelling like crazy. It helped my spelling. So I wasn't super introduced to D&D until I met my husband, at the time, boyfriend. But it was a little harder for me to get into because I'm like, I feel like there's too much else going on that I can't focus on the story that's going on. I'm not a big fan of the combat, but I love the story. I will role play a story for hours. I will do that way over any combat system because I just don't like being pulled out of the story. I want to focus on it. I want to be immersed in it. I want to feel that. That was always mine. But my husband is super into it, so much so I'm letting him remodel our craft room into a D&D tavern so we can play games there. And he's like, I really feel like if we have the environment, then you'll feel more at home and you can cater to like the hospitality part of it. Like I can serve friends like I'm at a bar and then we just sit down and play games right there in the atmosphere. So that's my experience with it. It's not much, but I'm getting there, and I really want to play a dwarven bard that has to be carted around in a wheelbarrow.
Because somebody's making.
I think it's Jaster.
I think it's me. What's it doing?
You summoned a demon, it sounds like. You're hearing like voices underneath it.
Hang on, I'm gonna play experiment.
Oh yeah, it's definitely him.
That's better. Oh, you muted it.
He won't be
Excellent.
big dogging anymore.
Oh.
Ooh, let me read
Family show. Family show.
So you brought up a very interesting point, Kokoro, getting started late in life. And
It's rough.
I gotta say,
Hard.
I didn't start till I was well into my 30s. Yeah, I never had anybody to play with when I was younger. I read the books. For some reason I bought all the Shadowrun books because I really liked the world building that was part of it. But I never had anybody to play with, so I was like, whatever. And then I bought World of Darkness books, like the werewolf game,
Right.
and read those. I'm like, oh yeah, the backstory's really good. It's like, who are you gonna play with? And then
Somebody.
so I still
My
have the
mind.
books.
I don't know.
But yeah, it just took the right group of friends that were like, hey, we play. I'm like, oh yeah, we'll give it a
It
try.
really means a lot to have a good group of people.
Absolutely does.
For sure. It can make a
It's
world of difference.
Just the dynamics and not having to argue. I mean, you're gonna argue because there's always one rules person that just has to like backseat DM. Or
A minute
anything.
for the lulls, guys. The lulls.
There's always one of those. But Yeah, it's been really fun, and I've been able to get the entire family in on it, and infect my friends that never had a chance to play it before, and they've infected their children with it.
So you're
And
saying
just,
Anansi's gonna run a game for us, right?
no, I don't want to
I'd be in on that.
You opened yourself up to that.
I did.
I mean, I could too.
You're
Yeah,
a little
let's do-
far
let's have
away.
Let's do that.
Yeah, I'm a little too far away. Not with that attitude.
If you come,
I've been playing D&D since I was 16 years old.
so for like what, 2 years?
Yes.
Pretty much.
Yes.
He's a wee lad.
Yeah, baby.
So
Like a gnome.
that was
When
almost
he
20
was a
that
young
was almost-
warthog.
When I was a young warthog.
Very nice.
So anywho. So
He's not playing a bard, that's for sure.
no, it was no. Actually, my first character was a rogue. Because who doesn't want to be a kleptomaniac? But no, actually, I didn't even make this character. It was a pre-gen character. I was just getting into it. Again, I was kind of at where Kokoro is now, as far as it's like I did a lot of text-based role playing with friends, crafting out a story and everything. The mathing element of it was just not my thing. The more I played it, the more I liked it, and that had a lot to do with the fact that I had some good GMs or DMs, depending on what games you're playing, growing up, and they'd been really good about crafting a campaign based on party makeup. And fortunately, a lot of the parties that I have been in have been more story driven. And if you're going to get into combat, there had to be high stakes in each combat to keep you emotionally invested into the campaign that can help further drive the story. And that's something.
That's what I would get into.
And once again, then you'd love Travis. You'd love my best friend Travis. He runs
my
beautiful campaigns.
my DMs have not been super great, but they've also been very sporadic. Like we'll have a game and then we won't meet again for like 3 months, and it's been
So like
awful.
Travis, what he does on his spare time is he leatherworks and he reads those rule books, because with quarantine and COVID right now, I mean, it limits his options as far as what he can go out and do. So he basically went back to his roots. He went back into reading, and he's been a much better DM as a result. And so he's literally been like the GM of like 90% of the campaigns I've played growing up. And then I kind of took a hiatus because I played throughout the summer of my sophomore year of high school, and then I took a long hiatus, and then I got back into it in college through the Saga edition of Wizards of the Coast Star Wars RPG, and then that got me back into D&D 3.5, because 4th edition had come out. It wasn't that great of a system, and so we just stuck with 3.5, and then of course Pathfinder came out. We dabbled a little bit with Pathfinder, a little bit, me more so, just because it was new content. And then 5th edition came out, and that's kind of where I hit my stride. But even before then, when I went back to 3.5, we did a Oriental Adventures campaign, and which is centered in an Oriental themed nation known as Rokugan. And I played this is where my class, because I've almost always played a monk, and that's actually where it started, was in that campaign. I played what was called a Henge Yokai, which is essentially like a demon. And what they did was they manifest into animal forms, and so I picked a fox, and I went by the name of Kitsune, which is fox in Japanese. So yeah, how original. So, but no, that's where ever since then, most of my characters after that have been monks. They have been of that particular persuasion of character building, and then of course I branched out into Ranger very recently, when I basically created my own Mando. so to speak, but made it in-universe appropriate. And of course, Travis, having the vast knowledge of Forgotten Realms that he has, was able to help me craft an in-universe character for that. I've made I think the only class I've never made is a warlock. I've played a sorcerer, I've played a wizard. My favorite so far to this day, it's a tie between the ranger and the monk. I love both those classes. I've probably had more luck as a monk than I've had as a ranger, but I do like a lot of the rangers' passive abilities, as far as especially in 5e when they revised it here actually a couple of years back, making the ranger more player friendly and more lack of a better term, useful in more situations, because a favorite terrain, favorite enemy, and so on and so forth. But yeah, the ranger's got a lot of passive abilities that I'm really big on. In the current campaign we're playing right now, I'm playing a bard. And I actually based that bard. I always base my characters off of some form of archetype in the last few years, in some way, shape, or form. Like I said, my ranger was kind of based off my Mando. My bard I based off of Gurreck from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. He's just very flamboyant, very eloquently speaking, and in the first few seasons he kind of passes off as just a humble, simple tailor. But he was a former spy, and that's kind of what my bard is. He's just kind of passing off as just a humble entertainer, and really he was a spy, and so on and so forth. So yeah, been playing D&D for a long time, and it just boils down to who's running the campaign and how well do they know their audience. Because ultimately, if you have a campaign that you want to run, you have to take into account, do your players want to run it with you? And if they do, great. Then that makes your work easy. If they want something more combat heavy, or if you have dynamics that want something more story driven, or if they want more puzzles, more skill, you have to try and find a way to balance that out. And really, not everybody can. It's kind of crazy that there's so few that can actually do that, and the ones that can, kudos.
It's a big job. It's a big undertaking for a lot of people. So I can see why it would be hard for some people to balance it out, is having to understand each of your players, all their strengths, understand the world that you're building, and understand the rules on top of that. It takes somebody who's really dedicated to manage it all. So you're gonna win some, lose some. Fortunately, there's a lot of great tutorials out on YouTube and on the internet everywhere. The kind of been coaching, and we've kind of hit a renaissance, so to speak, as far as popularity, with a lot of celebrities finally admitting to playing and everything, and new shows and everything, and there's like a
Critical
new show on
Role
every channel.
did a lot to really
Critical
kind of
Role,
bring that to the forefront.
Yeah, so
It's also brilliant playing and a brilliant GM, so that helps.
Yeah, definitely does.
The Matt Mercer effect is real. Do not fall for it.
I don't
Not
know.
everyone can be Matt Mercer.
No, and that's the point of the Matt Mercer. That's the moral of the story behind the Matt Mercer effect, is that nobody can be Matt Mercer, so don't try.
But doing voices is fun.
Yes.
I like
Yes,
to
Travis.
voices.
Travis started getting into that, and he is way more entertaining now as a DM than he ever has been, and it's just been so. And it actually, and admittedly, I like role playing. I like getting into character. Acting's my thing, and so that gives me something to feed off of.
Acting
Acting.
is your thing.
All right, y'all.
I'm a thespian.
I think
Oh.
we've hit our limit for the evening, so I'm gonna call it.
All right.
And I know some people got to get dinner, and
I do. I'm sorry.
that's okay. And if anybody wants to hang out for a minute, we can do that too. But I know
Yeah.
Kokoro's got to get to dinner, so thank you for taking.
Yeah, I got to make dinner myself, so.
Nourish yourselves.
So, I'm Bailey.
Again, I'm Kokro.
I'm Nancy.
I'm Jaster Fett, and you're not.
That's my line. And this has been the Gurreck Show.
Take care, folks.
Bye.